putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Welcome back, everybody. Kevin Jackson here. It's the Kevin Jackson Show. 844-551-8255, author of Race Pimping. If you read that book, I swear to you, you will say to yourself, this is, Kevin, how did you know all this stuff? It's like I'm psychic. And you will get such enjoyment because it'll make you understand all the crap that we currently are going through with all these leftists. You know, what's going on in St. Louis. You know what's really funny? Leftists don't protest inner city blight. They don't protest bad schools for black kids. Have you seen one of those? Leftists don't protest when black people kill other black people. No, you may occasionally see some black men in a black men's organization who will go out and say, look, we got to stand up and do this, that, and the other. Now, you won't see an organized protest. George Soros doesn't fund that. George Soros isn't going to protest the notion that Planned Parenthood, an organization founded to get rid of Negroes, is in predominantly Negro neighborhoods, killing babies, black babies at 300%, per capita of the population. And you're never going to see a protest over that. No way. You're never going to see a protest over black people who are brutalizing society in general. You're never going to see a protest over the notion that black businesses are not in neighborhoods where black people tend to assimilate. I don't believe in things like a black neighborhood. I think that's ridiculous. To say, oh, well, there's a black neighborhood. I use the term, but I think it's so nondescript in the sense that we can live anywhere. Why is it we congregate? Now, I lived in St. Louis in a black neighborhood. I chose to. I wanted to help the neighborhood. I didn't go there like, I'm going to help the poor indigenous black folks. No. I said, I'm going to try to give this neighborhood an economic development by participating in it. Meeting the people, knowing who they are, being a good neighbor. There was a guy that owned I don't know who owned it, but he had a business up there. He had a laundromat. I'd go up there, wash my dog's bed, use the big machine so we could just wash blankets and stuff like that. I used it, I don't know, one time every quarter or so. There was a bar restaurant, ate at the bar restaurant. It's owned by a guy named Dan. They opened up another bar restaurant across the way. I got involved, went to that one. There was a coffee shop owned by a black lady from Chicago named Debbie. And I know for a fact I was probably one of Debbie. If I wasn't Debbie's biggest customer, I was one of them. Top 5, easy. She finally sold it, but I was Debbie's client for quite a while. So I did that. And for my efforts, they broke into my car 5 times. They stole my barbecue pit, stole the sprinkler nozzle off my hose one day. Some crackhead. It's crazy stuff. But the point, look, it doesn't matter what I talk about in the black neighborhood. If it's bad in the black neighborhoods, nobody protests other than white cops killing black men in black neighborhoods or in anywhere. That's the only thing that gets protested. They don't care. And these blacks in St. Louis and elsewhere, they're like, we're going to make them pay. We're going to make them pay with money. Yeah, we're going to make them pay, all right, because doggone it, we're going to make them pay. And so now they're out, protesting businesses and stopping all the things that need to be happening, all these things that are going on around the country. I'm sorry, in the city. They're like going to the malls and there'll be economic development hell, to pay. Because that's going to help the city in triage that's gone from 850,000 people to around 318,000. I talked about some of these stats the other day that the St. Louis metro area has fallen to 77% of that of metro New York in terms of your dollar to theirs. We talk about women not making as much money as men, right? St. Louis doesn't make as much money. A St. Louisan doesn't make as much money as a New Yorker. They're both cities. It was 89% of what New York made in 1979. Now it's 77%. Keep it up. It'll be 62% And then eventually it'll be 31%. And not that New York is doing any great shakes itself. These bigger cities like Chicago, New York, there's a handful of them that are crown jewels. So nobody, they're almost untouchable in terms of inflation and all that, because they have a huge tourist thing. Like New York has the UN to support it. They get consulates and things like that. That's the reason why they survive. So St. Louis is in a tailspin. I talked about it on TV. You guys may have seen me doing a little bit of media these days. In a tailspin. I don't blame Ferguson for this, nor do I blame this incident with Anthony Smith. The death spiral has been occurring since the 50s. And the common thread is very simple. The common thread is Democrats. People know that. And St. Louis isn't alone in that. Big cities outside of huge metro areas find themselves in the same death throes as St. Louis, but St. Louis now has the added distinction of being the mother of Ferguson. The Ferguson effect, as it were. And once a city gets the reputation of being a hotbed of racial tension, death comes quicker. And that's what's happening to St. Louis. If things don't change for St. Louis, it'll continue. It's funny. I was looking at Cleveland or Baltimore, one of them, and they actually said, like, can it survive? It can survive as a smaller city, because just as to put it in perspective, Baltimore has been losing. I believe this is the case of Baltimore. They've been losing 23 people a day for 43 years straight. They've lost half their population in the last, so they were roughly 1 million. They've lost 300 and something thousand people in the last 3 decades. How do you survive? I mentioned, I'm sorry, it may be Cleveland, but I can tell you this, that was Cleveland, but I can tell you this about Baltimore. Baltimore is having the same problem. That Baltimore was well over 1 million people. It's finally fell under 600,000. It was 618,000 the last time I looked, and it was still going down. And I believe the last census they've measured since Freddie Gray, they say they're now at 589,000. They've now gone under the 600,000 mark. These cities are dying. Now, that's a good thing for us, because the only thing propping these cities up, believe it or not, colleges and universities. Maybe the hospital system, in the case of Baltimore, Johns Hopkins is. But the colleges and universities, city government, colleges and universities, they're losing manufacturing. They're losing their client base because they're so nutty. And they won't do anything about it. Crime ran through the roof. Look at the statistics, folks, in almost any major city in the country. And during the time of Obama, crime escalated at least double digits. So what do you say to that? You got rabble-rousers now in every city. They think they can build their reputation by essentially fomenting more and more racial incidents and all this. And the thing that bugs me the most, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, pick your icons carefully. Anthony Lamar Smith is not a person you should be fighting over, trying to make a point. It's very simple. He's a heroin dealer. And I keep coming back to this notion that if we will elevate a heroin dealer to a cause of civil rights, it's going to make you look bad. If that kid was a good kid, truly going to college, had done nothing wrong, and a cop shot him the way they've described for this officer Stockley, we all protest. Conservatives are with you. But when you lampoon, you make a mockery of something like this, you're not going to get people to want to support it. And that's where we are. And I'll be honest with you. I want to leave it to the lefties. I've got a house in St. Louis that I want to get sold. Because I'm looking at companies in there, that these venerable companies that have been around for a lot of years. Stifel Nicholas emptying out its offices, Wells Fargo, etc., on the day of that verdict. And I say to myself, going from 23 Fortune 500 companies down to 9 since 1980 doesn't bode well for this city. And it's time. If you're smart, you're going to do what I'm doing, and you're going to cash out. So anyway, I find this disturbing, folks, and I know we talked about it a lot today, but wanted to get it off my chest. Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow. We got a lot of things to talk about, so we'll see you then, right?
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.